As your network automation practice evolves, so should your tools. Don't manage your collections of Ansible playbooks and Python scripts artisanally. Move up to Itential and load your automations onto a scalable platform your whole team can use. Visit itential.com to find out more. That's itential.com. Welcome to Heavy Networking, the flagship podcast of the Packet Pushers Podcast Network. Our fine network has 12 pods, each and every one designed for your professional career development. I am Ethan Banks, coming to you since 2010, and with me is co-host Drew Conway Murray. You can follow us on Blue Sky, LinkedIn, and the 100% free Packet Pushers community Slack, and of course, Mental Telepathy. Today, we are staring into the end of the fiber and scorching our retinas so that we can see the packets. Our guest is Chris Greer. Chris says in his bio that he really likes analyzing pcaps. But my question is why, Chris? With the incredible array of network troubleshooting tools at our disposal, including emerging network models for artificial intelligence, why do we need to be scorching our retinas, or at least staring at Wireshark in 2025? Is there still a point? That is what we are going to discuss today. But first, let's meet Chris. Chris, this isn't your first time on the show, but let's pretend it is. In a sentence or two, would you tell the nice people who you are and what you do, and be sure to mention all that extracurricular stuff you do?
For sure, Ethan and Drew, it's great to be back with you. Thanks for having me back on. Who I am and what I do. My name's Chris Greer, and I am a packet analyst for Packet Pioneer. That's a company that I am working with. And when I'm usually doing my day to day is helping people to analyze problems on their networks at the packet level. They take the captures, they involve me, I parachute in, help them out, and then head on to the next thing. Also, the other part of that is doing instruction and teaching. So I regularly offer and deliver Wireshark courses that help people to improve their skill set in packet analysis in general, but also specifically with the Wireshark analyzer. To that goal, I have some content out there that I'd like to let everybody know about. One is my YouTube channel, so please feel free to go check that out, YouTube. We probably have a link to that, but if you don't see a link for some reason, go to YouTube, Chris Greer or Chris Wireshark. Hopefully you'll find me. If not, I'm probably doing something wrong. Also, I have a Udemy course on Wireshark that I have updated for 2025, so it is fresh and ready for the taking out there. And
Nice.
also for conferences, so two places people can spot me at conferences. One is the SharkFest conference, which is the Wireshark user and developer group that happens twice a year, once in the United States, once in Europe. And the other one is at DEF CON. So I'm a DEF CON instructor. I go and I teach TCP analysis for hackers and as well as overview of Wireshark at DEF CON. So that's my
I didn't make
stuff.
that connection at first because you said DEF CON. I'm like, well, wait, what's DEF CON got to do with packet analysis? But then actually, a lot, because a lot of the hacks that are happening, the way that vulnerabilities are being discovered or exploited is happening way down there.
100%. So that's why, maybe we can go into that later, but just the need to understand, really get a handle on what TCP does and how it works there's a gap there. So I've been working with DEF CON organization to fill that gap.
Well, Chris, the topic I want us to discuss today, you being a guy who's all about packet analysis, is what's the role packet analysis really plays in modern networking? We've got so many analytical tools. Artificial intelligence has gotten real for networking now, where there's network models that can really, at a deep level, analyze what's going on and summarize things for us and percolate issues up to the fore without having us to get into the packet level. So, okay, with that in mind, I want us to walk through where we're at with packet analysis in 2025 and see how does it still fit? And so maybe the right thing to do, Chris, is define packet analysis for us today. I think it means different things to different people. It could be as simple as loading a pcap into Wireshark and applying some filters, but I think it could be broader than that too. So how do you define packet analysis in the 2025 context?
It's a great question and a very, it's a hot topic these days. And the simple thing that I go back to is that a sprinkler system doesn't eliminate the fireman.
Mm.
It's great to have analytics that help us, and really with anything we do, right? Yeah, I dare I say I want to write an essay. Hey AI, but back to thinking of how, which come on everybody out there that's writing an essay, don't have AI do it because that's wrong. But
I'm glad you said that.
AI, yeah, no, don't do that. But the intent behind that is to help us to do our workflow faster and maybe at a scale that we can't as a human being. So AI tools, there's a couple that's, I mean, some of my friends have been working with lately in the industry and in the community of packet analysis, and I think they're great to the extent where I can pop a packet capture up there, maybe learn some things that at a meta level that I might not have seen because I'm down there at the packet level, down in those details and those hex values, and you kind of just need to back up and look at the whole scope. And AI can really help you to do that. What are the top talkers? What are the top conversations? What's the general flow here? What's the utilization of this application? You know, just general questions like that. But there's still issues that you got to get down to the detail of. And at present, many of those tools miss. So some of the issues that I work with my clients, the whole reason I'm brought in to begin with is because they've already tried those tools. They've already been through their networking monitoring tools and they're still having the problem. So what's left is looking at the golden data set, and that is the packet. So packets give us a detailed look at what's actually happening on the wire and just eliminate any question about what that is. And we're still in a state now where AI is great. This doesn't know everything. And for me, I kind of have a just something that I think about in my mind. Don't automate what you don't understand.
Mm.
Mm.
So if you can't fact check it, then is it really helping you? What if it's wrong? What if it's leading you in a tangent, a wrong direction? So that's actually what I've seen when I've used some of those tools with some of the issues that when I know the answer, I'll pop it in there and say, hey, what does it see? And it's not wrong on the stuff it sees, but it didn't necessarily help point me to that unique problem. So I have some examples if you're interested.
Well, first, I'm curious, what kind of scenarios you're being helicoptered into and why packet capture is what they thought they needed to resolve that scenario, or packet analysis at that point.
That's a great question. So just one that I've been brought into a few times is, okay, new connections are getting reset. Just a broad statement. The symptom that was being experienced at this one client, you open up a handful of tabs on a browser, they work just fine, and then new tabs on your browser don't work. Doesn't matter where you go, doesn't matter what site. You go and you grab a fresh cup of coffee, come back, now everything's fine.
Hmm.
You go to one of the original tabs that was working fine, you hit refresh, now it doesn't. Now the new ones are now working, and then you know what, you just get frustrated, you close your browser, you open it back up, everything's fine.
Hmm.
So it's those weird come and go issues that are difficult to reproduce on demand,
Mm.
but are nagging enough to affect productivity. So that stuff. So this client that I have in mind, they got a packet capture of it, and we took a look at it, what was happening, because of course the finger pointing was just going all over the place. The network tools showed all green. The network's up, throughput's not bad, no glaring issues. DNS is still awake and alive. Generally speaking, it's responding well. Devices are getting addressing. No otherwise red flags.
Can I make a guess based on the symptoms?
Sure.
And you led with, you said the word reset in your setup, which made me think, is if maybe that, and maybe that's part of the answer. So I got a clue if I end up being right here. But something like a firewall or another middle box saying that host has too many connections open. I'm going to reset the new ones. Something along those lines.
Good job, Ethan. That's exactly where we were going down the road. Now let's go down that. Let's go down that right now. If I'm AI, I see that. So the packet capture, what happened was, so things are going fine. Then we saw when the client was trying to establish new connections, new SYNs were going out. Immediately reset would come back, right? The thing though is that in
As
order
in
to
as
make
in TCP reset, sins going out, reset coming back. I don't want to talk to you. Go away. But it was
correct.
a middle box doing it, or was it?
So here's the question. What leading symptom, and it's okay if we don't know this right now. I'm thinking like AI, right? So okay, there's a reset. That server is resetting you. The only way to make you accept that reset is if there's something in the middle that's generating it, I got to make it look like it came from that server.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going to be like, well, what's this? I didn't talk to you, Mr. Load Balancer. Like I got to go, no, I'm whatever airlines. No, you're not connecting to me. And then my system will go, oh, sorry, my bad, reset. So what do you guys think would be a leading symptom? Where could I look in the packet to see where it actually came from?
Depends on network segment and where you're at, in part. Don't know for sure. I won't get there fast enough.
It's okay. No problem. And in sidebar, we can totally delete that if you guys want to. Up to you. I
No,
don't
no,
care.
this is
It's all
fun.
right.
Go, go, go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't want to, throw you under the bus here. Anyway, so a very important symptom, and this is maybe our first fun detail to share with everybody, is check the ingress TTL, time to live, in the IP
Yeah.
packet. In the IP header, you look at TTL, you go, who actually sent this? How many routes did this thing come through? Because if it's got a ingress TTL of 62, for example, most stations start with 64, 128, 255. Those are the bit boundary numbers. Most stacks begin with one of those values. So if I see an ingress of 62, just do the math in my brain, this thing got routed twice. What's two routes from me? Because it sure isn't whatever airlines.
Hmm.
That came from
That
my
would be
network.
right.
So
It
now what
originated
am
from your
I?
network as opposed to if it was, I don't know, 50 or something, because it took a bunch of hops across the internet, then you could infer, yeah, that truly came from whoever it was I was talking to. Yeah.
What? Absolutely. So now right there, okay, I sent a SYN, I got a reset, but who sent it? AI is going to say, you got a bunch of resets. But is it going to help me point the blame in the right place?
It's going to tell
Because
you
it's
the
got it.
symptoms, not the root cause necessarily.
Exactly. Or what if, how does it detect whether that's aberrant behavior or normal behavior? What if in some environments, maybe resets could be normal in certain cases? I'm going to, what if there was some scan activity, and we just saw sin reset, sin reset, sin reset. It wasn't necessarily bad, but then how does it make that determination of, in this case, this is bad? So that's why I'm saying it's not that it's not helpful. It's very helpful, but there are cases where it still does take the analyst to go in and fact check and go, that's true, but what is it doing now in this specific case? So in that example, yes, a couple hops away, there was a firewall that was in basically not allowing new connections to be made because it had a TCP limit per user of how
This
many
was a
connections
firewall
per user it would
policy
support.
that was being triggered by all the connections being opened by this client.
That's exactly what it was. Now somebody went on that firewall and they dropped that number to something that was ridiculously low. So we involved the vendor, we looked at the resources, we looked at the number of users, the amount of load, and we were able to reset that number to something that would better support them. But back to packets, I mean, it was right there in the packets. It took us, because it's something I've seen before, I knew what to look for. It
Mm.
took us 2 minutes to find it. I mean, but that's something that I'd seen before. So, but back to the packet allowed us to have the amount of detail and know where to look and what to look for
Mhm.
to then be able to diagnose root cause and actually fix it. So that's one example.
But do we get to a point with network models? I'll continue to be devil's advocate here, Chris. Do we get to a point with network models where we can train them such that it could learn, hey, if I look for, resets and TTLs, I could infer that the firewall policy is blocking you. Do you think we get there?
Absolutely, I think we do. And that's why I'll say, I'm not against AI. I think it's or some of these machine learning models, or even tools that can help us to do this better, faster, at larger scale. That's necessary, right? As a human, I can't do 100 gig per second.
Are
you
you
know?
seeing specific, tools aimed at packet analysis, or is it people taking captures and throwing them into ChatGPT and just seeing what comes out? How are people applying AI to this?
Well, there's one tool that came out not long ago. A fellow named John. I've done some. Yeah, he and I have done some social media stuff together at Cisco Live and others. But he has been working on packet a PCAP specific tool
Hmm.
for that's AI driven, and it's called Packet Copilot. And we
Is this
can link
John
to it.
Capobianco by any chance?
That's the guy. That's
Yeah,
Not
we know
him.
John.
surprised.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's him. Packet Copilot, and I personally have checked it out, and I'm like, wow, this is really going to help my workflow. I can use this tool to interact with a packet capture in a more chat kind of way. Like, hey, what's here? What's the top talker? What's a top connection? Is there any of this in here? Is there any of that in there? So it does some of that work for me. Um, but when it comes down to brass tacks, I still think that it's relevant to have access to the data set or to the
Mm.
data itself, and to not with this is what I say in some of my courses. Understanding the detail is always going to help you no matter what automation tools there are around. Now you'll know what those automation tools are doing. It's
Mhm.
Mhm.
it's the high school kid that you give a calculator to. It doesn't mean that they don't learn math. So they
Right,
still need to
right,
understand what that calculator's doing and when to apply a certain function and not.
right.
So
You're getting into a kind of an important point here because anyone who's spent time looking at Wireshark, especially for the first time, it's a bit overwhelming. I mean, I've done a lot of this over the years, but packet analysis is hard. I had to spend a lot of time really understanding how protocols work before I could maximize whatever value I was going to get out of Wireshark. So for example, one place I worked, I had to learn TCP sequence numbers and acknowledgments and really understand how they worked and where I was going to see those different numbers showing up so that I could correctly interpret the information of Wireshark. I didn't have it straight in my head earlier, and I was getting things reversed, sequence numbers versus acknowledgement numbers, and it ended up being mystifying what I was actually seeing until I got it. I went back and reviewed. Oh, right, that's how this works, and then it became a reliable source of troubleshooting help to me. So, what level of networking knowledge do I really need to have, Chris, if I'm gonna have packet analysis be a useful tool for me?
I think that's a great question, and thanks for representing that emotion because it's one that is very common out there. When I begin teaching a course, I'll ask who's scared. Does anybody feel like they're in the cockpit of an airplane and you see all these bells and whistles and like what matters? What flies this thing? What do I not do? That's how you feel. And I don't forget that feeling because that's how I felt when I started too. So I have a strong connection to anybody that has that feeling experience. So for one, do you need to be an expert to do this? No. Do you need to be a RFC Jedi and just to have decades of networking experience and certifications and so on? Absolutely not. I think that barrier of entry that's perceived with packet analysis is very different from what it should be. This is not just for the elite. This is not just for those mathematician level engineers that can read hex in their sleep. Yeah, no, not at all. I think you need a very basic level of networking to begin learning packet analysis.
Basic
If
level,
you're to
like I should be studying for my CCNA, but maybe haven't passed it yet, but I kind of know what a VLAN is, and I'm getting my head around basic routing protocols. That kind of level, or
So I passed my CCNA with Wireshark in one hand and the CLI in the other. That's what
mm.
I did to study for my
Mm.
CCNA.
Ah,
How about the Cisco CyberOps? I mean, that was one for me a few years ago. I was at Cisco Live and the CyberOps Associate, it was new. I was like, I got to check this thing out. I got to see just what this is about. I'm going to take it and fail because then I know what to study. Like, just to see what it is. Went in there and I actually passed it. The only reason is it's full of Wireshark.
mm.
No
Mhm.
specific spoiler alert. But packets are everywhere on that thing. That's it's serious. The only reason I passed it. Come on,
Yeah.
because and I'm not a Cisco super brain. So anyway, but back to your question, do you need to what level entry? And I think no matter how far you go with networking, knowing what's happening on the wire and how the infrastructure adjusts, shapes, forwards, and affects the traffic will help you no matter what you do and how far you go. Um, I
So you're
think there's
saying don't wait. Don't wait until you hit
no,
some specific level to even start playing with packet analysis. Just get in there.
absolutely. I lived in a Spanish-speaking country in Central America for 10 years. I went down with taco, nacho, baño.
Hola,
That's
me
about all I
amo.
had. Yeah, barely. And it was very daunting and scary at first. But I got out there and I was unaware that day by day I was learning one word at a time and starting to recognize patterns and starting to understand a little more. And it didn't hit me until a couple years in that a family member came to visit and someone that zero Spanish. And we were interacting with one of the friends I'd met down there, and I was fully translating between the two of them.
Hmm.
And I was like, and it wasn't until that moment I was like, oh man, I'm not fluent, but I got enough to do a little bit here.
Mhm. You
Hmm.
can make it work.
So I think
It's funny.
the same thing can happen.
Yeah, one of my very earliest run-ins with Wireshark was before it was Wireshark. It was Ethereal or Ethereal, whatever how you want to pronounce it, before it had gotten rebranded. And I was troubleshooting a problem of this works over the LAN, this custom developed app. It doesn't work over the T1. There's a sense of how far back this goes. It was a T1 connecting up a remote office, so we're really going back some years. Pulled it up, and this was before the days of everything encrypted. I could see a plain text SQL query going across the wire from the client that was on the far side of the T1, hitting the server in the data center. And the query response, they were sucking I don't know how many megabytes of data out of that database just to answer one simple thing because they did not have a very efficient query. They were pulling back a massive data set and then sorting it in the application. I'm like, guys, you can't do that. There's not enough bandwidth for that. Yeah, it works in house because we got fast Ethernet or gig Ethernet everywhere in here. That T1 is a tenth of the bandwidth or less, 1% of the bandwidth that you got to work with. That's why it seems so slow in the remote office. And they were really disappointed to hear that, but I didn't have to be a super protocol expert to see that. It was very obvious looking at the data stream what I was looking at, and was able to explain and resolve the problem. Is my point with that little anecdote?
Yeah, and I think, and it's a I compare learning packet analysis to learning language a lot just because it's a bit by bit thing. When you start,
Hmm.
just look at what's there. An ARP, an IP something. There's a TCP flow. And in time,
Okay,
as you learn more, you'll start to make connections.
that is a fair point, but I will also say, compared to 10 or 15 years ago, if I put Wireshark on a network today, the network is super noisy. There's all these MDNS announcements coming out from all the IoT crap we've got in our houses. Almost any segment's just got a lot of noise on it. There's a lot of V6 now in addition to the V4 because a lot of devices are dual stack and they'll use V6 and V4 depending on what they need at any given moment. Uh, doesn't that kind of make packet analysis harder than it was?
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. Actually, it makes me think of a session of yours, Ethan, I'd listened to a while back on MDNS and how it was just hammering one network at one time. I think you had a
Yeah,
guest on that were talking about that.
we did. Yeah.
Um, Part of developing the art of packet analysis is learning what to ignore and what's
Ooh.
noise versus what's relevant. And the faster you can get rid of the noise and focus on the what matters, the clearer your PCAP is going to be. So that's something that like on my YouTube channel and in my courses, something I'll jump on right away is what matters. What are we actually looking for here? Because you're spot on. There's once you lift the hood on a network and you start capturing what's actually there, there's tons of stuff. So I think it's just becoming better at learning to focus at what you're actually what your attention is going for.
So what do you typically do then? Do you make a few baseline assumptions? I probably want to be filtering between these two hosts or these, 3 or 5 hosts that might be interesting and run a capture filter from there, or do you capture everything and then do then filter in post once you've got everything?
I hate to say it depends, but it does. The amount of data factors into the decision. So if it's just one client that's not generating a ton of stuff, hey, capture everything. If I'm capturing on in a data center where, man, or in a cloud environment where you got some very heavily used servers, then yeah, capture filters are going to really help me focus on what I'm looking for. But back to client side, even where I do capture everything, well, then another decision point comes to, do am I sure of what I'm looking for? Does that application really operate on that TCP port? Is that server that I think it's talking to actually the one that it's talking to? So
Hmm.
sometimes I'll start out just saying, let's get rid of some of this noise. It's likely not ARP. It's likely not CDP. It's likely not this and that. I have a few noise filters that I use where I can just
Mhm.
click those and at least scrape off some of that chatter. And then it'll let me focus on what's left.
And now a brief sponsor message from iTential. If you're like me, your network automation skill set is an evolving one. You've probably done some Ansible and Python work and you've had some quick wins, but now you're getting to that point where you want other people in your team to use the automations that you've built. They're sort of okay with Ansible, right? They're definitely not 100%, but they're okay. However, they do not want to figure out Python, and they can't even manage the library dependencies. Most of the folks on your team, what do they want? They want you to give them a thing that they can run and it just works. And if it doesn't, any network task requiring automation comes back to your queue. I call this the platform problem. You need a platform that the whole team can use to run automations without them having to know anything about maintaining a Python environment or even how to run an Ansible playbook. And this is the service iTential provides across their product portfolio. You've created a bunch of network automations. All right, now move them from your laptop into a repository and then let iTential execute them in a scalable, secure way that abstracts details from people that don't need to know while giving access to every nuance for those people that do need to know, people like you. iTential puts you on the road to self-service network automation, allowing anyone you like to run your automation, all while integrating with all the other systems that your organization runs. And to me, this is the ultimate destination for network automation systems, self-service. To find out more about iTential's products and how they help you build an automation platform, visit iTential.com. You can test drive iTential free for 30 days. That is iTential.com. Do you play the game of capturing before and after middle boxes?
I love any point of capture that's possible. If I'm at a crime scene, I want all the video feeds I can possibly find. So yes.
Yeah, yeah. I used to capture. I used to do a lot of F5 work, and I would capture before and after F5s because F5s would do well. They do by definition they're proxies. They do tons of packet mangling, and they can do header rewrites and all kinds of interesting things. And so to see what hit the box on the front end versus what got spit out the backside to a pool member was a lot of times fascinating. Is this what I think it's doing or not? And so on. I was just curious if that was a technique you liked as well.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, what we think the box is doing and what it is doing can be very different. But going back to why packets matter, because that's what's happening. Packets on the wire is what is happening.
Hmm.
Instead of, hey, that box I think is doing this or that, or it should be this or that. It's like, well, you can prove it when you have the packet.
Ethan, mentioned networks getting more complicated. They're also encrypting traffic more frequently. Does that sort of neuter the value of packet analysis, or can I still get value out of headers if I'm dealing with encrypted traffic?
Actually, that's a question that I just answered on my YouTube channel. Is it still worth capturing in a largely encrypted environment?
Mm-hmm.
When it's TCP based, we can still get a ton off of that feed. We can still see sequence numbers, acknowledgement numbers. We have a full TCP header. We got the handshake. We can at least get up to and exonerate the transport layer. We
Mm-hmm.
can rule out client. We can rule out network. We can rule out a lot of middleware boxes. So we don't have to decrypt necessarily to get answers. We still have a lot there. Problem starts happening though. What if we exonerate all of that and we need to get into that application? Is decryption even an option?
Hmm.
The other thing that we start to see more of is UDP based encrypted protocols, whether
Hmm.
whether custom or quick based. Quick is tough. It really it takes away that whole TCP aspect. Now you just have a UDP stream,
Oh
and
boy,
so
yeah.
and all you can really see is you got Ethernet, you got IP, you got a little bit of UDP there, but it makes it a lot more difficult. But that said, the flip of that, and this is something I'm seeing more with the clients I interact with. Just yesterday, a guy calls me. We're having a conversation, and he says, "Yeah, I can send you some pack captures. Yes, it's an encrypted app, but we're decrypting it right here." So they had a TLS. They had a point where TLS was actually being decrypted then re-encrypted at the load balancer level.
Hmm.
So I think the good thing is that since encryption and performance analysis always fight with each other, right?
Right.
The more
Yep.
encrypted something is, the safer it is, the harder it is to analyze. The need to decrypt and to continue to have visibility at certain points is something I'm seeing uh, to be more prevalent out there. Just more people
Hmm.
have it now than they used to.
Hmm.
Does AI help with encrypted traffic streams? That is, if you train AI to look at encrypted data streams and make inferences about what it's seeing, is there something there that it might be able to pick out that we'd be harder pressed as humans to pick out?
Yeah, I think it that's a great place for AI, especially at scale, because it can start to see patterns across conversations. Where when we're so detailed into one conversation, one UDP stream, for example, we might miss something. Where if we back up and get that overview that it can help with, and yeah, I think that's a good place for it.
Hmm.
You mentioned that sort of initial example you walked us through of something that a client faced, and you said something you've seen a lot. Given the work you do, how much of it is, oh yeah, I know what this is, I've seen it before, versus this is a brand new thing? Like, I guess in the industry, we always talk about we're innovating and doing new things, but in the end, it often comes back down to stuff that we've been doing for years. And just curious if that's sort of proved out in your troubleshooting work, or are there often things that you never even encountered before, like, wow, I didn't know these two systems would communicate like this, or whatever.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yes, yes, I run into new things constantly, and I think that's what keeps me hooked.
Hmm.
It stays interesting. But now ask me how often things go back to the fundamentals,
Right.
and
Hmm.
the I'm saying Ethernet, IP, TCP, UDP, and the core services, DHCP, DNS, often. So, and even in stuff that I haven't seen yet, or maybe an application that's sitting on top of some of those core protocols that just haven't changed a whole lot.
Hmm.
Or maybe in a middleware box or something on the infrastructure that's adjusting something on one of those core protocols. Um, the better you know those things, a lot of new things are just they're still running over those core things. Like what's old is new again.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
still here. So I mean, it's a tough question to answer. I regularly encounter new issues I've never seen before, but having a solid understanding of the fundamentals helps me understand the nuances around it, and then it limits how much I have to go research or
Hmm.
dig for, right? Because you just know those core communication models with those protocols.
So
So it sounds like packet analysis is an opportunity to exercise your knowledge of those fundamentals, which is something you hear frequently from network engineers. If you want to advance, make sure you understand the fundamentals, have those locked down. It sounds like it's almost iterative here with packet capture and packet analysis that helps you actually get that fundamental understanding of the fundamentals.
Absolutely. Yeah, because so much goes back to that. Or hey, if you got the fundamentals, look at how much you can exonerate.
Hmm.
Think about how
Yeah.
much you can rule out,
Yeah.
which is sometimes that's what it ends up being with sometimes with a client. And that's something I like in my statements of work. Of course, I can't 100% guarantee resolution because who can? Nobody. No one on this earth can guarantee it all the time. Now, 99.999%, do we fix it? Absolutely. But can't guarantee it. But what I can absolutely guarantee, and that I've been 100% successful, is ruling out so many things. It's
Uh-huh.
not this, it's not that, it's not this. Just focus, get your attention off all that other stuff, all that other noise. Focus here. This is, we can at least wrap the problem down to a silo, a box, a domain, this aspect. We
Mhm.
can do that with packet analysis, even with encryption, much of the time. And that comes down to the fundamentals.
Hmm. When,
Hopefully that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah.
yeah, when you are looking at these sorts of things and you find a problem that's down at the fundamentals level, how often is it that the problem is a misbehaving device versus misconfiguration of a device?
Boy, I'd say it's pretty split
Hmm.
because I think too it's a misunderstanding of what a certain feature does,
Mhm.
or here's this hot new cool thing.
Like spanning tree
Implement
causes loops, that kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah. Or here's this hot new cool thing, and then oh wait, not understanding that it also has this downside.
Hmm.
Like making this adjustment over here can affect this over here. So I think that's a tough one between someone configuring something versus a box just doing something crazy. And also too, updates that can be pushed out that we didn't fully know or test in a certain way, that can affect.
On some level, I think all of us get stuck in time up to where our most recent education was. So, for example, if you got up through CCNP and you finished that 6 years ago, and you haven't been paying too much attention to the details since, your brain's stuck from when you last passed that test and got that cert. But things move on. So, for example,
Yeah.
I was reading about a draft the IETF is working on right now where there's a DSCP code point value you're going to be able to set that, depending on how a million things go, might actually be preserved across the internet. Though there's a first, well, where's my education stop? I mean, I can talk about express forwarding and assured forwarding and class selector and what all those things mean. And now those are 20 plus years old, maybe more. But time has moved on. And so my point being, if I had been looking at a Wireshark capture and saw this new DSCP code point value that I hadn't heard of before because I hadn't been keeping up with the work that the IETF's been doing, I would have been like, what is that? Why is that there? And I wouldn't know. I would look at it and say misconfiguration. No, ignorance on my part, not knowing
Yeah.
what that code point value was for, or making bad assumptions about what it might be for. You do have to keep up to correctly interpret the data, I guess is where I'm going, Chris.
That's true. And I think that's the fun, right? If you always went in there and saw the same things all the time, that can kind of get boring, but it's seeing these other nuances. One that I've run into more of late is IPID being all zeroed out
Hmm.
because a station might want to evade fingerprinting. It doesn't want you to watch any shifts, changes, so IPID being zeroed out by a system. And that's, it's something I'm seeing more. And it's funny because, um, you know, in my classes, I might make a statement. Any modern TCP stack must support selective acknowledgement. I haven't seen that not supported in years, blah, 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 and I yammer on. And then I capture the next packet and it totally proves me wrong. And then my students are like, but here. And I'm like, right. Yeah, I didn't.
Right.
That because that now broke because IoT doesn't need it. Yeah, I mean, so that's why I've learned in the packet space to just be very careful about what absolutes you put on things because you're one upgrade away from being wrong. You can you got to stay on with what that system and how it's behaving and what TCP being such a yeah, I call it a flavor. This Linux box has this flavor, this Windows is running this kind of flavor, and they'll behave a little different. So it's it stays interesting. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it did for sure. Well, let's get into a few practical suggestions for folks. Let's say here in early 2025, Chris, we've convinced people that packet analysis still matters, even in the face of AI, even with all the awesome tools that we have available to us now. Let's get into some educational kind of stuff. If I want to dig into packet analysis, I want to learn this at a better level. Do you have like a very favorite book you recommend, or maybe a couple of books? And it's okay to be self-serving here if you happen to be the author of such a book.
I would love to be a Wireshark author. I want to come on here one day, Ethan, and say I wrote a book. Uh, until then, okay. So people can't see me turning around and looking at my little bookshelf, but TCP/IP Illustrated. It's I'm actually pulling it down. People can't see this, but I am, and it's just my little manual.
Th-
TCP/IP
This is
Illustrated
the
Volume One, the
classic
protocols.
TCP/IP Illustrated as I see it. This is one that's been around for quite a while.
This is the second edition. So they upped this one, I want to say somewhere in the 2010s. They just did a couple of updates to it, but I'm constantly looking at this thing. I would just literally was yesterday. I had to look up some information on duplicate selective acknowledgement. Boy, you want to get nerdy.
Hmm.
So I just had to make sure I understood like when specifically that's being indicated, and make sure I was clear on it. So that's a reference that I pull out quite a bit. And
So before
then
you move on to the next reference,
yeah,
that book's got even the second edition. It's got some years on it. You still trust it?
yeah. For the fundamentals, yeah. For the core stuff that it's talking about. Now, I'm gonna do my little grain of salt thing in the back of my mind for some aspects of it. I'll keep in mind that it's 10 plus years old. I'll keep that in the back of my head. But as I'm looking through things with Wireshark, and it's got a bunch of Wireshark capture screenshots in there, as I'm looking through it, that there's just a lot of aspects of this core stuff that hasn't changed.
Do you have another book you'd like to recommend, Chris?
Boy, then I think for me, real talk, it goes next to RFCs,
Mm,
the RFC of whatever I'm researching. Because that's back to these books reference that, like that's the standard, right?
yeah.
So I'll go back to RFCs. Honestly, and then the rest is such a mixed bag. Things to your point about things timing out. I've just had a lot of books come and go off my shelf over the years, often related to whatever cert I'm studying for. Which my stance on that,
Same.
I really like what you said earlier, Ethan. Just because I got my, let's just say CCNP 5 years ago, doesn't mean I stopped studying. And that's for me. That's why I like researching on stuff, because it
Yeah.
forces me to look into new technologies, try to stay current with the industry, try to see what's emerging, and it can even help you get a little deeper into something you're interested in. It's a goal to build toward.
All right, so we talked around some written resources that you recommended, Chris. We got TCP/IP Illustrated, second edition, a classic. You said you dig into RFCs. What about for people who like courses and want to get into packet analysis? I know you mentioned you've got one on Udemy, and feel free to talk about that for a bit. What's in there, and then any other courses you might want to recommend.
For sure. So, people, if you just want to get started and you want something free, if you hit up my YouTube channel, I have a 9 lesson series. It's a Wireshark Masterclass, and that's what I called it. It's just your first foray into the core stuff you're going to need to get started. So I definitely recommend checking that out. In most of the descriptions of those videos, you'll find a link to my Udemy course. That's one that I partnered up with David Bomball to
Hmm?
who's another YouTuber around more Cisco and cybersecurity stuff. Hopefully, you found him. But
Yeah.
partnered up with him to deliver that course. That course, it really takes you from zero to hero, and in that it covers it to a deeper level. The core protocols, filtering, where to capture, how to capture, what happens to a packet as it flows through a network. And like I mentioned before, that's new and fresh for 2025. So you can go check that out. Next, I would say, to be honest, somewhere where I learn quite a bit is the SharkFest presentations.
Mm.
So if you
Hmm.
head out to YouTube, you can see a lot of those from previous SharkFests. And this is where you have people that exceptionally talented and experienced in the packet space. Some of them wrote standards. Some of them are on
Mm.
standards boards. They work with the ITF. Some of them are developing new and future things. And back to the conversation, how to stay current. Those are things I'll keep my ear to. How to, like what's coming and what should I be more aware of is happening on the wire.
It's really interesting how accessible some incredibly knowledgeable engineers are, people with years of experience, or as you say, they helped define a standard that governs what we're doing on the network today. And they're there and they're willing to share and talk about it and say, oh, this is a common misconception. Actually, at the time, what was going on was this, and they give you background and so on. It's extraordinary. These people are not inaccessible whatsoever. They're there. You can go see their stuff on YouTube and maybe even chat with them.
Absolutely. And then if you're like me, you end up being stuck on a stage one day and they're sitting in your class and you're
The
second
ultimate
guessing
imposter
everything coming
syndrome.
out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You're second guessing anything coming out of your mouth. You're going, what? Oh man, Gerald Combs is sitting in the front row of my class. Oh, so but that's part of the fun. You can't take yourself too seriously. So I would say those are some ways to get started. And then after that, it really depends. This is where I start to see a bit of a pivot. What do you do? Who are you? What interests you? Do you like cybersecurity? Do you like hacking? Well, my
Mm.
goodness, go study that and dig deeper into TCP from an offensive pen testing perspective because you're going to be looking for different things. If you are a network engineer who lives and breathes on a single system and your job is to keep it up and running optimally, well then that might send you down a different level of a different road, right?
Mm.
So I think after getting those core skills, man, the world's your oyster with Wireshark. Do you want to do wireless PCAP? Do you want to? I just had somebody yesterday hit me up. Hey, Chris, can you come teach a voice over IP course for us? I haven't done one in years because I just haven't had the question. But now I'm like, ooh, I want to dig back into SIP or whatever. You know, I want to dig back into secure RTP. What can you learn about that in 2025? So I'm now interested. But somebody else hit me up for a course like, "Hey, how much like multicast do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh man, not a lot cuz I'm never asked, but man, I want to learn." So
Mm.
there's just so many ways you can now take this skill set that what interests you, get the core skill set and then take that, do interesting stuff. If you're not interested, you're not going to stick with it.
So we've mentioned Wireshark a lot because it's widely used, it's free. Are there other and maybe commercial packet analysis tools or platforms that you might even have already on the shelf in your enterprise organization that you think folks should take a look at?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. I mean, you hit a point with Wireshark and packet analysis as a human being on a laptop watching a feed where things are happening so fast and so quick, we just can't keep up. Come on. So I think once you start to hit above, yeah, for me, if I start interpreting for my client, like, okay, they're looking at more than 10 megabits per second, 50 megabits per second, even 100 megabits per second, I got to start throwing some firepower at this thing
Uh,
because the capture limitations of a laptop are strikingly low.
uh,
Mm.
I can't run into a data center with a laptop. I need some big guns. I need some hardware,
Hmm.
more power. So in my toolbox, so one box that I love and use is the IOTA from ProfitTap. It's
Mm.
basically a hard drive with a network tap stuck to it, and you power it up and you hit a button, and that thing's doing line rate packet capture.
A hard drive, or is it actually an array and it's striping?
I don't know the internals. All I know is that thing's a terabyte little box.
Yeah,
So
interesting. Well, I
I
asked because
don't know.
back in the day, I worked for an enterprise and we had this problem and needed to capture effectively everything on the wire from multiple points. And
Mm.
and there was a company, if I remember right, it was called Wild Packets, and they made
Mm,
this
yep.
monster packet capture box with several network interfaces in it and an astonishing drive array built into this thing, just so that it
Yeah.
had enough read-write IOPS capacity to be able to keep up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and there's other players too. Allegro packets, Endace, Viavi's out there. Those are some of the big players in the packet storage, collection space. And for me, where I usually look at it is just because I enjoy those details. I like looking at the packet itself. Is okay. I need this box to be able to do a ton of capture and also help me filter down to what's relevant and what I'm looking for, and then still give me access to the packet. Like I want to be able to go just maybe swoop across a period of time and then maybe click on a conversation or two and then say, okay, kick that out to Wireshark. I want to see it from here. Kind of
That is,
get
it's
out of my
got a
way.
database of all the packets, and it's going to spit it into an analysis tool that you want to use, in this case, Wireshark.
Yeah, streamed it as packet capture, high level analytics. Now give me the details.
Yeah. Okay.
Help me get to the packets that matter quickly. And help steer me toward the packets that matter. That's what we look for. So I'd say those are the big players that I work with.
Yeah, and as you said, they tend to be specialized hardware devices that are able to not lose any packets as it's taking ever faster data streams coming off of our 10, 400, whatever gig networks. I don't know. It's got to get into a point where 400, 800 gig networks, we're coming up on 1.6 terabits. Nothing's going to keep up with that, right, Chris?
No, yeah, yeah. I mean, we've always lagged the speeds and feeds because of storage and the speed and making heads and tails. But the hard part is that there's a lot of policies that companies still need to keep up with. They as a policy need to capture a certain amount of traffic and be able to go back in time for a specific amount of time, whether it's for security or performance or some type of service level agreement. So the need to try to keep up will always be there, in my opinion.
Well, Chris, great conversation. I mean, you've not that I wasn't sold before, but you've sold me. Yeah, packet analysis still really matters, and it's
You'll
I
buy what
still
I'm
have
selling.
fun. Yeah, I do.
It's
I
free, so
still open Wireshark and just listen and see what's going on out there, because it's always interesting. There's always a lot going on, and even at home, just sitting here in my house with all the IoT stuff, there's just a ton of data out there that's interesting to analyze. Plus, if you've got a laptop that's up and open to a bunch of services out there, you got more connections out there than you think, by a lot. You'd be really shocked at the number of connections that are out there. Going back to our part of the conversation, that use case problem where that middle box was shutting people down because they had too many sockets open. Yeah, it's amazing how many sockets you can open now just with apps doing what they do. It's really astonishing. So, Chris, where can people find you on the internet?
yeah. If you head out, I think mentioned it a couple times now, but YouTube. Hit me up on YouTube. You can find me on
Hmm.
LinkedIn. Um, those are the two biggies that I'm out there and chatting on. So
You
invite
got a
anybody
homepage,
to.
some kind of a blog,
I do.
maybe something like that.
Yeah. How about packetpioneer.com? You can hit me up on my
Packetpioneer.com.
website.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that's how,
Okay.
if you're interested in some Wireshark training for yourself, for your team, I do virtual, I do on site, I do hybrids, I do individual courses for people. What I do is when someone's interested in some Wireshark training or consulting, just have that discovery call and then figure out, what are your goals? Where are you starting from and where would you like to get to? And how could we craft a course that helps you to meet those specific goals? So that's
Well, as
my
as we're recording this, Shark Fest for North America on the East Coast in Virginia is about 6 months off. It's going to be June 2025. Were you going to be there?
I will be. So I'm going to be there and also teaching a pre-conference course. And the intent behind the course I'm teaching there is to get you ready and up and running and ready to consume the sessions at Shark Fest. So
Got
we
it.
we hatched that a few years ago. So yeah, the pre-conference, and I believe the title itself, the title can kind of shift around on me a little bit, but it's back to fundamentals. It's the core concepts behind Wireshark and the core protocols.
Excellent. Well, Chris Greer, thank you for joining us on Heavy Networking today, and thanks to you for listening to the episode. So go download Wireshark if you never have. It's and if you are a Wireshark user but you haven't opened it for a while, just make sure that thing's updated, because I'm the guy that I'll go for weeks or months and I haven't opened Wireshark, and then I open it. It's like, yeah, I should check this thing. Oh, I'm way behind. Wow, and then I take a little bit of time to update it, because there's new features under the hood that they're adding all the time. Definitely worth taking a few minutes of keeping Wireshark up to date. And if you're not up to date with Packet Pushers offers a lot of podcasts to make you more awesome at what you do in the world of IT. You can hear Drew not only here, but also on our weekly news show, Network Break, our security pod, Packet Protector, and Tech Bytes. And you can also find me on the N is for Networking podcast. That's our news show covering networking fundamentals for anybody new to networking. And also, I'll be on Tech Bytes with Drew. And I'm on the Packet Pushers YouTube channel doing demos of cool things with vendors and working in the Packet Pushers lab. Send your comments about this episode to packetpushers.net/follow-up. And until next time, just remember, too much networking would never be enough.